Hello and welcome to the Varietal Show. My name is Rory and you are watching Varietal Literature's YouTube channel. Sorry, I just like that drop in that song. I'm here tonight to do what I call the Bob Ross thing, which is something we occasionally do on the Varietal Show, which is basically just where we practice writing together. And what we're going to do is, well, I'll just kind of show you here. We go and we look at stock photos. I have some photos of cabin interiors here. We pick one and we sort of write a little vignette around it. It takes 10 or 15 minutes each. Usually we do about 3, but it doesn't matter really. It takes however long it takes. And if you're doing it along with me, you know, like Bob Ross painting along with me, I'll drop little tidbits about stuff that me as a writer thinks of when putting together description. And then we can all share it together in the live chat. If you so desire, you're not obligated to do it, but it is fun. You might even, I don't know, ask for advice if you really want. I see that GS is here and says, good evening. Good evening, GS. And Big Drew is here. It's good to see you again, Big Drew. I haven't seen you in a little bit. Big Drew says that heat is annoying and he's ready for autumn. It's sticky today and I don't remember stepping into pudding. I like that. Yeah, so, you know, this is the Varietal Show. We're going to chill out and we are going to write some stuff. Big Drew says, I'm not sure if Holly's House will be joining us. I believe there's a birthday being celebrated over there. Well, that's great to hear. Hopefully that birthday is going well. All right. Well, there is one thing I want to do before we get to the writing. And that is Left Unread is a section where we recommend, I recommend stuff that I am enjoying or I think you might enjoy, story-based stuff. And specifically what I'm going to do is I'm going to recommend what I recommended last week, which is I'm going to recommend that you get Francis Peck's The Broken Places, which is a book I don't have physically. I have it as an ebook. But there's 2 reasons why I think you should read it. One is that it's excellent. But the second reason I think you should read it is on Wednesdays, until the book's done, we're going to meet together at 6:30 p.m., discuss the chapters that we read in the previous time, which we announce on our YouTube or Instagram, which is at varietal_lit. And yeah, we just kind of get together and talk. We did our first one yesterday. I think it went really well. It was myself and Avalon talking about it. If you want to go back and get a sense of what it is, it's a book club. It's discussing what we liked and didn't like and just appreciating it. But all the same, if you are looking for something to read or you're looking for a group to discuss it with, or you just want to know a little bit about Vancouver's literary scene, because that's the whole thing, pick up Francis Peck's The Broken Places, read through the first 2 parts, and get back here Wednesdays at 6:30. Though we might not actually be meeting next week. I just got notice that some indie band, Backstreet Boys, I think they're called, is coming to town next Wednesday, and perhaps some of the people involved in our book club might be absent. So it depends on if I think I could do it on my own or not, which I probably can't. But keep an eye on either the Twitter or Instagram. I might even put a video up on Wednesday if I don't end up doing it live. Big Drew says, I'm bringing a friend tonight. Well, hello, friend. She is thus far silent background interloper. Well, I think that's often the case, isn't it? It may or may not contribute. Nobody's obligated to contribute. The show is my own, of course, to handle and worry about. But I'm always happy to hear other people's writing. Nobody here needs to be a great writer. Just needs to enjoy doing it. All right. So, Just have to fix one thing here and we'll get right on to the writing. I just remembered that for this setup we need to have 2 separate windows or you won't be able to see the picture. GS says, oh, Backstreet Boys is Wednesday. Oh, you've heard of these Backstreet Boys, have you? I of course have. I'm kidding in case anybody is unaware. But yes. And almost done here. Oops. This is the compelling television that you've come to watch, right? It'll make sense when you see it. Oh, hello, Rachel. Are you Drew's friend? It's good to meet you. See what I'm doing? I'm allowing us to see the pictures as we draw. I should have set that up ahead of time. I've been I've been busier than normal this week, and unfortunately I forgot. So for anybody who hasn't just logged off because this is going too slow, thanks for sticking it out. The card I'm looking for. All right. So, we are entering the part of the show that we call Lit Games, and the purpose of Lit Games, of course, is to is literature games, and sometimes they're more like high energy kind of games where I'm trying to make stuff up on the fly, and chat's messing with me, and we're rolling dice and adding in chaos. But tonight we're just going to be sort of working on prose because it's been a long week for me, and I don't know about the rest of you. And in that long week, I was like, I just feel like doing some writing, and maybe some other people will as well. So that's what we're doing on Lit Games. We're taking some pictures, and we're going to try and turn them into prose. So hopefully that's what you're signing up for. All right. So I felt like the first thing we could do tonight is just do the that was Smudge making chaos over there. First thing we could do tonight is a cabin's interior, but I'm not sold on this one in particular. Big Drew says, yeah, pros, professional people. Indeed. Kind of like this one here, but I'm going to have to pull the screen down a bit to really see it. I do like it, but I don't think I can actually fit it into frame. This is so funny as a problem. Like that's probably too small to see, right? All right, we'll go with one that's a little more lateral then. Here, there's a good one. Why don't we draw that boy right there? Hopefully everyone can see it. So, if you were here last time, my main advice for prose is to have a through line. So I'm going to kind of repeat this, but if you have already heard it, you can go right ahead and start writing out your descriptions. What I mean by a through line, and the example that I've gone back to, even this week I've used this example, is in The Great Gatsby, when the front lawn is described from the perspective of the wind traveling down over the bushes and across the many plains to the ocean, or the think it's the ocean, anyways. The water, anyways. And what I mean by the through line is that everything is described as if we are the wind. And so when we notice things, it's sort of as the wind would affect them. So he describes the bushes as they are rustled by the wind. He describes the grass as the wind soars over it. Like, there's a context then, kind of a viewpoint that the audience can hang on to. Because the problem with description is sometimes it just becomes a stack of interesting sentences with no real picture to them. The other piece of advice that I gave last time that I'll repeat this time is writing is a thing more felt than seen. So try to think about like what feeling you want to draw out the description of this little cabin. GS says, are we just describing the room? Yeah, however you see fit. If it turns into a little short story, that's fine. As Bob Ross would say, they are just happy little accidents. I think first and foremost, raw creativity, just describing something, just creating prose, can't be done in a process of like high self-criticism. So you kind of just need to do it. Follow your heart. GS says, I think we're watching as Rory does that. You can if you want. For me, the like feeling I get from this obviously is a kind of warmth and humility. Like, it's not a really big or elaborate cabin. So, you know, it doesn't feel like one owned by anybody wealthy. It feels like maybe I'm sort of here with some friends and we're renting it. It feels personal, so I'm going to go first person. It was the first time a whole space was mine by my own pocket. Sure, I only had the cabin. I don't know why it took me so long to write cabin. I only had the cabin, For the week. Woo, hey, come on. Don't make me look like an old man here. Any more than the face already is. Hey. I only had the cabin for the weekend? But that was hardly the point. I may have just rented it for an hour. And for that hour, I would have felt a king. Well, there's some good little details coming in, which I'll integrate. If you want to do it that way, guys, by the way, you're welcome to. If you want to integrate the details you would have. Though, I'll be the first to admit, the cabin was not really fit for any royalty. The air was warm and a bit smoky from the old iron fire pit that heated it. Which was nice and went a long way. It's probably a run-on sentence at this point. Went a long way to covering over the must left by years of damp forest air. That air was stung with the floral? No. with the bouquet. Bouquet is kind of pretentious. That arrow was stung with the sharp scent of pine. So it was undoing some of that musty work. Being a late August trip, there was a low hum and bump of wasps and flies taking their turns at the window. I settled into the chair, puffing out some dust, and smiled at the low-lit kitchen. I doubt it could handle more than a pot of pasta for two, but I felt like it was a 5-star bustling line of cooks. Felt like it was ready for a 5-star. That cabin wasn't worth what I paid, but then freedom can make youth delusional. It's one of the many joys being young. You don't notice that things could be better. You're just happy that something is yours. Okay, let's see what other people have come up with. Big Drew says, a string of 100 or so incandescent lights hung overhead, glowing like fireflies on a humid summer night. The light pouring in from just beyond the window told a different story, though. Sheer curtains hung barely filtering the light. Screens in the window kept insects out, but wouldn't be bothered to filter out the smoke and soot of a nearby wildfire. Safe inside, a well-worn, leather-clad sofa offered this writer a space to rest his weary bones. The long day had taken its toll till he caved, and all he craved was a cup of tea. Very good, Big Drew. I like the use of light to sort of tie a theme through it, because I mean the picture is very prominently lit, but that's an interesting approach that I think sort of meets that brief of trying to tie it together. And Rachel, our newcomer, is posting in here. It says, the light illuminating the small space, though it might be a winter's morning, you can not only see the warmth but feel it. Though the accommodations were simplistic, you could still smell the scent of eggs were cooking on the single burner stove. I like it. It's got almost kind of haiku feel to it. I like because of how much is sort of unstated but implied. That's what I mean by haiku. I don't know if that means anything to you, but haiku is a pretty specific style. I don't know. Most people know like 575, but haiku is more elaborate than that. But yeah, there is a kind of haiku quality to it. I really enjoyed that, Rachel. I chose to tie mine together, as I often do, which isn't an obligation, by the way, around a concept. Around the concept of my, imaginary characters' delusions. Which aren't really delusions. It's just sort of appreciating what you have. Rachel continues, there may not be much to this small space, but the time spent in peace is worth more than any amount paid for a large, luxurious cabin. Indeed. All right. And one thing, before I guess get off this, one thing I'll point out, a really common, I don't see this problem at all with any of the works submitted here, but a common issue you run into with people who write and haven't done enough writing to really sort of figure it out for themselves is, there's a lot you could describe, right? We could talk about these sort of amber tones of wood. We could talk about the mismatch of the table to these kind of older cabinets to this black, the fact that it's not really put together in a way to where it's fashion forward, right? You could talk about many aspects. There's many ways to frame the thousands of little details in a picture. But what decides how they're framed is what you want a person to feel about that space. And usually in a story, it's dependent on what the character feels, right? So highlighting, is what writing is. And when I say that writing is something felt more than seen, that's what I mean. It highlights things that get a feeling of being in this space more than it highlights every detail. I'm not too interested when I'm writing that people see the exact room that I see. Instead, I'm more interested that they find the same experience with their own subtle, personal, subjective experiences. Okay. Chat, is there something in particular you want to... I want to keep with our theme of interiors, but what interior should we describe next? We can go wildly different, something cold and frenetic, but this is a stock photo site, so let me know. I'm just going to get a drink of water here. Let me know what... think here. Let me know what you think we should do our next interior, because last time we did all exteriors, so I wanted to do some interior. All right. GS said the theme should be peace. Yeah, I think so. In this room, the Feng has no shoey. As Big Drew. And GS says, out with the shoey. And Big Drew says, a pox on the shoey. Big Drew says, dimly lit bar. Let's write a country song of observations. If you want to write a song, you certainly can. Country bar. Let's see what that brings up. What stands out to me is most of these are not bars, let alone country. Like, why is some woman against a white wall coming up under country bar? Okay, let's just try bar interior. Ooh, that's a fancy one. Lots of sort of trendy looking ones. I don't know about your country, Drew. Maybe kind of people who in country bars don't take high-end stock photos for free or something. Okay, I'll look a little longer and then we'll just pick one. We could try a tiki bar. Yeah, we got a vote for tiki bar. This is not a tiki bar. My God, why is a living room with books in it a tiki bar? We're for a few here. Let's just go with bar, see what comes up. Big Drew says, you don't like country music, do you? It depends on what you mean by country. There is some country music I really like. Most of it has not come out in the last 20 years, with the exception of Hank 3. That's a guy I like very much. Here. This is the best we're gonna do. It's a little more generic than I want it to be, but... Victor says inside a tipped over house on a moonless Halloween night. Okay. Scene 2. A dimly lit bar. Now for this one, I'm going to try and choose something in the environment to try and tie together my description of it, which will ultimately shorten it up because I won't be using a character this time. GS says, what? No tiki bar? Yeah, no. GS says, I think writing a country song would be hilarious. There's a reason I don't write lyrics or poetry, and that is because I am bad at it. Bad enough at it that I couldn't do it live, if at all. My best shot is not live. Like, the reason I can write stuff live is because that I know very well. But, you know, when you're on stream, you don't see this, but there's 2 screens looking at me and a lot of stuff going on, and I don't think I could create poetry or lyrics under those conditions. So I'm sorry, I can't see myself doing that soon. Anyways, I'm going to pick an element in the environment, and I think what I'm going to pick up on is wood. Now, I don't see wood everywhere I would want to see it in this room, so I'm going to kind of build on this image. Describe it a bit off from what it is. But I'm okay with that, because a good idea matters more than complete accuracy in most stories. The bar was a construct of rebar and concrete, like every other office, warehouse in the city. The difference was it went to great lengths to make you forget that. The bar was an old oak, glossed with resin. Sure, glazed. I was going to say glossed, but that's not a great word. Glazed is better. Glazed with resin, through which you could still count the rings on what was once a surely grand old tree. Now, of course, it was in a kind of viewing case. A wax museum rendering of the tree it once was, being ogled by the drunks. Hunched over it. Some softer woods with deceptive stain. Maybe pine playing as hardwood. Caramel brown hardwood. Lined the ceiling and hid the wires that stitched through the hidden concrete walls. So like I'm trying to keep this idea of like wood going here. And again, it's sort of, can I draw the eye around the room as all the places that we notice wood? The tables seem to be a compressed particle board with a veneer of wood grain hidden under another thick finish of resin. I doubt you would notice how fake it was. Fake it was. In the dim mellow lights, feigning to be something old, but really just being overpriced. The bar had only been open a week. But everything in it was old, or playing at such a idea. The bar wanted you to feel like you were somewhere with history, I think. Reaching back to to the time of grand old oaks. Of course, there weren't really any oaks left. Most of them are bar tops that got tossed when they go bankrupt in a few months. This place isn't old. It's just dressed in the bones of things that really earned their right to be there. So you might confuse it as a place that should exist as well. But it was, of course, just another warehouse or office of concrete and rebar. Just another place holding money for some and taking it from others. Big Drew says the patrons don't care if there's no smoking sign in there. They sing and dance in their Wrangler pants. Some tea and whiskey sounds good to me. Don't care where you're standing, it's time to go dancing. I think he's doing lyrics here. And I hope that I'm really capturing it with this flat reading. The room smelled of bourbon and mahogany as Quincy stumbled through the door. A billiard table to his right and a bank of black leather seats with chrome bases to his left. Q made his way straight up. And Rachel says the interior of the bar felt as though it could have been built before the turn of the century, with the skinny path between the long mahogany bar and the very meek mix of tables and chairs. GS says, I like the way you aged it, Rachel. That evokes an ambiance. And Rachel says, thank you, I'm just not feeling the wood. You don't have to use the wood. It's not the assignment. But describe it however you feel. I just wanted to see if I could make it work with the wood. Big Drew says, the middle to Alan, the tired old barkeep. Q ordered an old-fashioned and slugged it down. Another my good man, he shouted, trying to shake the disgust from the face of the man, sitting in the... And it cuts off. Let me have a drink of water here. I'll think about whether we do another one or whether I should call it there. You guys let me know. GS says, okay, we need a lively one, Rory. Okay. Don't know if stock photos do lively. Let's just put in party and see what comes up. Another out of left field, please. Left field. Okay, what about... What about that? What about a factory? Like an assembly line? I don't really know of any instance in literature where I've heard this kind of factory described. There was a lot of sort of, you know, turn of the century style factories, but I don't really think I've ever heard of this place described, so I'd be curious to see what people can find in it. I do think I need to extend it down a bit, though. Big Drew says, the mirror across from him, Quincy, carrying on, sitting in the mirror across from Quincy wore a black trench coat and khakis and was appalled at what he was there to do. Alan was a friend, but a paycheck is a paycheck, and when the chips are down, sometimes you have to do unspeakable things. Oh no, my C ended. Guys, the C is over. My window ended. Big Drew says mine flows better if you read it through. I did read it through. Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, if you guys aren't into it, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. GS says, is this an Amazon warehouse? I don't think so. Could be. Looks more like an assembly line. As much as we have some pretty bad associations to these kinds of assembly line settings, you should know that in your city, places like this exist, and they are just normal workplaces. You know, making clothes or whatever else. Scene 3, the factory. It was a place with so much echoing about. You couldn't hear anything. But everything. I mean, yeah, as I sat at the table, no, not the table, at my station. I mean, yeah, as I sat at my station, firing off pin nails into the frames of motel art. I could pick up a shouted, "Hey, Jane," or maybe the whine of the compressor, but only for a moment. Besides, you weren't there to listen. You were there to make quota, be friendly enough on lunch, but not so friendly you're late. But not so friendly your lunches go long. And to keep drinking from the branded water bottle they handed you on your first day. They told you then As you know now, that heat exhaustion and hearing damage were their only compensation claims in 20 years. You do question that. You might question that. As do I want to keep it yeah. You might question that. As I do now. Question the reality of that? The reality of that. As I do now. And you see how Pero spins the forklift twice this week. He kicked off a pallet of glass. For not strapping it in. We all blamed him, of course, but I must admit, I knew he was in a rush, and I know how the floor super can be. Speaking of which, I needed to stop staring off at forklifts and trying to pick out conversations. Or I might get another warning. It sounds bad, but it's really my own fault. I know what quota is. I never missed it when I first saw it. When I first started, what does saw it mean? But now, some years on, it's like I just can't force myself to care how many pin nails I drive into a frame an hour. Let's see what people came up with. Big Drew says, pneumatic tools fell from the steel trusses overhead. Like any other day, Carol made her way to her station. She liked to pretend she was living her dream as a NASCAR pit chief. I like that. The buzz of electricity, the rushing hair from the tools, the rumble of the conveyor all made her think of those days with her dad at the speedway. Pleasant, albeit distant memories. Safety goggles on and earplugs in, Carol eagerly awaited for quitting time because this weekend she was headed to the drag strip to take her machine down the quarter mile she knew she had. I think that's really good. I kind of want to hear the rest of that story, Big Drew. Develop that character. Make a short story. It's a good idea. Somebody works in a factory, wants to be a pit chief. That's cool. That's a cool concept. That has legs. Rachel says, mothers and wives alike were flocking to sign up. I think I maybe missed the beginning of that. Let me see. Yes, I did. It was the 1980s. Women were starting to find their own way in life, aside of that of being a housewife. Pneumatic tools fell from the steel trusses overhead. Like any other day, Carol made her way to her station. She liked to pretend she was living her dream as a NASCAR pit chief. Oh no, what am I doing? That's Drew's. Sorry. Mothers and wives alike were flocking to sign up to the work in the new factory, just built up the quiet gravel road. Once inside, you were inundated with the scent of oil. That's a good detail. Cardboard and sweat. Cardboard does have a smell. The clink and clank of every machine on the assembly line collaborated in a deafening chorus of metal on metal. I like the idea of a chorus. You could probably pull more from that even. She knew she had this is Big Drew again, a 10-second car, but she couldn't wait to leave that miserable soul-sucking factory behind. It may not be NASCAR, but Carol has dreams, and not Pero or anyone else will stop her. Oh, you used my same name. I don't think Pero's a real name, to be honest. I just picked something. I get tired of putting Joe and Smith and everything. All right. Well, it comes to that time of day where I read back what I wrote for people who skip ahead. So, if you're seeing this, you have skipped ahead to see the results. Although I will say it's worth watching the whole thing to hear the results from the people in chat, who also did a lovely job, in many ways, frankly, better than mine. I'm going to start with our last scene first, because I already have the picture up. We put up this picture of a sort of modern factory. It was a place with so much echoing, you couldn't hear anything but everything. I mean, yeah, as I sat at my station firing off pin nails into the frames of motel art, I could pick up a shouted, "Hey Jane," or maybe the whine of the compressor, but only for a moment. Besides, you weren't there to listen, you were there to make quota, be friendly enough on lunch, but not so friendly your lunches go long, and to keep drinking from the branded water bottle they handed you on your first day. They told you then, as you know now, that heat exhaustion and hearing damage were their only compensation claims in 20 years. You might question the reality of that, as I do now, when you see how Pero spins the forklift. Twice this week he kicked off a pallet of glass for not strapping it in. We all blamed him, of course, but I must admit, I knew he was in a rush, and I know how the floor super can be. Speaking of which, I needed to stop staring off at forklifts and trying to pick out conversations, or I might get another warning. It sounds bad, but it's really my own fault. I know what quota is. I never missed when I first started. That's correct. But now, some years on, it's like I just can't force myself to care how many pin nails I drive into a frame in an hour. And I see that GS says very accurate Rory. Well, thank you. Yeah, you had mentioned that you worked in one. Then we did the bar. What bar was it? Maybe down a bit more. Oh no, this is the party. The bar, there it is. So our second story, our second description was of this bar. And mine was, the bar was a construct of rebar and concrete like every other office and warehouse in the city. The difference was it went to great lengths to make you forget that. The bar was an old oak glazed, the bar top, I should say. Looks like a hyphen, but it's actually an M-dash. The bar top was old oak, glazed with resin through which you could still count the rings on what was surely once a grand old tree. Now, of course, it was in a kind of viewing case, a wax museum rendering of the tree. It once was, being ogled by the drunks hunched over it. Some softer woods with deceptive stain, maybe pine playing as caramel brown hardwood, lined the ceiling and hid the wires that stitched through the hidden concrete walls. The tables seemed to be compressed particle board with a veneer of grain hidden under another thick finish of resin. I doubt you'd notice how fake it was in the dim mellow lights with visible coils in their bulbs, so they can feign to be something old, but really just are being overpriced. The bar had only been open a week, but everything in it was old or playing at such an idea. The bar wanted you to feel like you were somewhere with history, I think, reaching back to the time of grand old oaks. Of course, there weren't really oaks left. Most of them are bar tops now that got tossed when the places like this go bankrupt. This place isn't old. It's just dressed in the bones of things that really earned their right to be here. So you might confuse it as a place that should exist as well. But it was, of course, just another warehouse or office of concrete and rebar. Just another place holding money for some and taking it from others. And then the first one we did was a cabin. I had to go through several iterations to find the bar that we used. The cabin we used was this. It was the first time a whole space was mine by my own pocket. Sure, I only had the cabin for the weekend, but that was hardly the point. I may have just rented it for an hour, and for that hour I would have still felt like a king. Though I'll be the first to admit the cabin was not really fit for any royalty. The air was warm and a bit smoky from the old iron fire pit that heated it, which was nice and went a long way to covering over the must left by years of damp forest air. That air was stung with the sharp scent of pine, so it was undoing some of that musty work. Being a late August trip, there was a low hum and bump of wasps and flies taking their turns at the window. I settled into the chair, puffing out some dust, and smiled at the low-lit kitchen. I doubt it could handle more than a pot of pasta for two, but I felt like it was ready for a 5-star bustling line of cooks. The cabin wasn't worth what I paid, but then freedom can make youth delusional. It's one of those joys of being young. You don't notice that things could be better. You're just happy that something is yours. All right. And that was our little descriptions, not stories this week or anything. And let's see if there's anything I missed in their chat. GS says, quota is that elusive thing that keeps growing the faster you work. Yep. Big Drew says, can we do something involving bus drivers next time? Maybe a weird merging of the honeymooners and speed. I mean, sure, we can probably work in a character bus driver somewhere. I don't really know what I'm going to do next week. I rarely do. I'm going to try and repeat things more, though, just for my own sanity, if nothing else. So, like, one thing that I enjoy doing that I know doesn't get a lot of traction is this. But I like doing it. I do enjoy just, at times, reading people's prose and creating prose. So I appreciate the people who show up and do this with me. My sort of friends across the internet. The other thing I like is using writing prompts, which we did last week, which I think I'll probably do again. But beyond that, I don't know. I like we have lots of little games I can dip back into too, things with dice and random prompts. There's that terrible game I came up with that requires me to occasionally make entire sentences of alliteration. Like, we could do that again. I don't know if that was actually fun, though. I'm sure it was funny to watch me do, but and fail at it. But I don't know. Like I said, as long as we are writing, and as long as people are enjoying that writing, then this show is doing what I intend it to do. Well, there's no reason for me to yammer on and drag you guys through it. Thank you so much to everybody who dropped by, and you know, helped me out in the chat and shared their work. That's a brave thing to do. Share it on the internet. Thank you so much for coming by, Big Drew, and thank you, Rachel. It's lovely to meet you. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and if you did, I hope you'll come by someday in the future. Come back and see another show. For those who don't know, on Tuesdays at 6:30, I read old folk tales and fairy tales. 6:30 Pacific, I should say, so when this stream started, on my time. And on Wednesdays, we're doing the Big Van Book Club, where we're reading currently Francis Peck's The Broken Places. And of course, Thursdays is this Varietal show where we write together. Sometimes it's less chill than this and a little more frantic. If you haven't already, please remember to subscribe. We're actually one subscription away from mandating that I read a poem about how much I hate a particular town in my province, which is 50% the F word, and will almost certainly get shadow banned by YouTube. But it was a deal I'd made a long time ago, because we're at 49 subscribers, and if we hit 50, then I will do that foolish thing. And beyond that, thank you so much. But remember to like and all that kind of stuff. If you liked it, you don't have to if you didn't. And check out our stories on our webpage, varietal-literature.ca, if you want to see stuff where like it's been edited and some thoughts been put in and so on. I've been Rory. I gotta go cash out, so you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Get out of my shop.